welcome everybody. I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Journey to Thrive podcast. I'm your host today, Jim Friend, and I'm the Director of Mission Advancement for the St. John Vianney Center. Our podcast is produced by the St. John Vianney Center, and if you like the content, I hope you're going to stick around and subscribe. You can find us wherever you follow your favorite podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. I want to welcome today Sister Karen Cote, the Director of Outpatient Services at the St. John Vianney Center. Welcome, Sister Karen.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Sister. And this month, for those who are watching on YouTube, we're celebrating the launch of our new annual report from 2023. And in that report, we featured Sister Karen and the great work of our outpatient services. And of course, we're at the tail end of March, but this month we celebrated National Catholic Sisters Week. And so I thought we'd chat a little bit with Sister Karen, celebrating your vocation, as well as maybe talk a little bit about how you got started and what led you to think about a vocation. Sister, how did you first hear the call?
Well, I have to tell you, I was a child at the time, and I remember being at Mass with my parents. And I looked up at my mother and said, I want to be one of those. I want to be they called them altar boys at the time. And my mother said, we're sorry, you can't do that. They're like little priests and only men could be priests. Well, I was devastated, obviously, at the time. So my fall kind of took a little bit of a shift, if you will. I graduated from high school and decided, that I wanted to join the Navy, which was something that I've always wanted to do. And did that for 10 years. I was discharged from the service, and I wound up with a job with International Harvesters, being one of the first female assistant service managers. But I did that for about 15 years, and I had a good job. I had good money for a woman my age at that particular point in time. And I just knew that there was something missing in my life. I needed more. And my sister had already entered religious life, so I sat and spoke with her. And that's when it really became clear to me what that more was. I needed to be more about doing service. So that's how my vocation began, and I got connected with the sisters and integrated the spirituality and the charism. So that's basically how I began my vocation story.
That's beautiful, Sister. Did you find a lot of support from your family as you were making this discernment?
I did. Most families that have two men or two women that want to enter religious life or priesthood, usually there's not that support. The parents aren't going to get any grandchildren, obviously.
Right.
But in my family, it was 100% support.
Ah, that's beautiful. And was it your sister, or was there one particular person who you feel was really pinnacle in helping you make that decision through your discernment?
It was basically my sister, because we could talk on a level that, she understood religious life. I was just coming into it, and I trusted her judgment. So she helped me in sorting out some of the different charisms in the communities.
Absolutely. And so community life is obviously central in your life. And was there an adjustment when you came into community life? It's not just you anymore. Now you're part of a community of sisters. Was there any kind of an adjustment period? Because it's kind of like joining a family, I would imagine, in some ways.
Definitely was an adjustment period. I was used to living by myself, having my own car, having a dog, and having my own money, right? Now I don't have my own car. I don't see my paycheck, and I don't have a dog. But I mean, it's been a very beautiful experience. And that was just a whole shift. Community life is something that you need to grow in. And it takes time. And you're living with women with different personality traits and features. And I have my own. And we're trying to figure out how to blend with one another so that we can carry on the mission. And sometimes that's easy, and sometimes it's not.
Sure, absolutely. And as a sister, as you look at your career now, some of it maybe from the rearview mirror, Have there been any kind of moments when are like maybe a highlight when you would say, wow, those were some of the best days when I was either first getting started or, throughout my journey as a religious woman?
There's been many different aspects of my life as a religious that were highs.
Yeah.
No lifestyle is perfect in any ways.
Sure.
But just being with the people, being able to serve the people, and to see how much need there is out there for the clergy and for the men and women religious. They long to see us. They really do. I think for them to notice us and for us to be present, it gives the people hope. Right? And that's what we want to do, is bring hope to this world and to our church.
I couldn't agree more. I as I think of the priests and the religious sisters in my life, they are symbols of hope, each one of you. And we're so grateful to you for being that. And what is like if somebody were listening to this, maybe they're a young person, and I don't know how many young people listen to our podcast, I'll be honest with you, but if they were thinking about a vocation, what's a day in the life of a religious sister? I'm sure everyone's a little bit different, but what is community life like?
Well, first of all, the young woman would need to enter into the formation process, and that in itself can be very stressful, especially if the woman is coming from the single life, and again, all of the temptations that are out there. But it's a matter of just learning that we don't live independently; we live interdependently, right? And we're not dependent on the other person. It is about interdependence. How can we rely on one another to share our joys and our sadness, and to also to be present to the other sisters in the community? And presence is such a big thing when you're living community life. Sometimes a woman may be having a bad day, and, just to be able to take some time and talk with her and see what her day was like. And maybe we're in different ministries, but like I said, that presence is so important, because if we can't be present to one another in community, how are we going to do it when we leave the community and go into ministry? It doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. And I would imagine community life, if it's really effective, then it's an opportunity to deprogram at the end of the day and maybe even talk about some of your challenges and hear some of the other community members' challenges, and support each other when you're having those challenging times, as well as celebrating when you're having those highs. Those great moments. Yeah. So along your road, sister, you chose a path in psychology. Tell us a little bit about what led you to that.
Well, there's a part of me too that always wanted to be a psychologist. I was always interested in behavior and the differences amongst different people. And so I was just drawn to that. I had worked out on a reservation. I was a clinical director of a residential treatment program for Native American youth. And just seeing the need out there in New Mexico, especially on the reservation, at the time going to the public health service, they didn't have enough psychologists really to go around. So my thought was to go into psychology, into the area of study, get my doctoral degree, and then return to the reservation and be of assistance that way. Suicide among Native American youth was very high at the time, and I suspect probably still is because of the drug or alcohol issues out there in the Southwest. But then it took a turn when I came back to the East Coast. I came back and went to work for St. John the Andes. And then I found a different type of calling, if you will, a calling to serve the church in a different way. The church was going through some very difficult times in terms of the sexual abuse crisis. And I, too, like many Catholics that we know, I wanted a healthy church. I wanted a church that would be transparent. And that's why I chose to stay here at St. John Vianney's because I do believe that the work that we do here in terms of outpatient, the assessments for the men and women religious and clergy, will help nurture and support that healthiness within the church. Finding men and women who really want to serve. It's not about a job. It's about serving. And if any way we can help in that, I think that would definitely serve the church. It's not the assessment is not the be all and end all of someone getting assessed and accepted into the program, but it is a very vital part.
Absolutely. And as a diaconate candidate, I had the privilege of seeing what those assessments were like firsthand when you assessed all of our classmates in the Diocese of Allentown. And it was a very comprehensive survey, as I recall. A lot of questions, and the follow up afterwards as well was good. As I thought, give feedback on where we're at and kind of what our expectations were. So that's really helpful. So you came to St. John Vianney Center, and I know that you weren't initially the director of outpatient services. What was it like then, and how has your department evolved over the years?
Well, when I originally came, I was director of social work. My master's degree and undergrad are in social work.
Okay.
And the master's in clinical social work with a minor in psychology. So I was in that area for a while, and then there was some changes within St. John Vianney's with the way that was structured. Then I wound up working in the pastoral section of St. John Vianney's. And then probably a little bit later on, I went to work for Dr. Connie in the outpatient department. And then he retired, and that's where I picked up and became director of the outpatient department here now.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And I know we just renovated a new office for outpatient services, and it's beautiful. And you work with dioceses all over the country too, don't you? As far as doing their outpatient, not just dioceses, but religious communities who, as you said before, must be a pretty wide spectrum of different organizations where you receive candidates from.
That is correct. We serve many different dioceses across the United States. Some that I wouldn't even expect to be coming here, but they do. We also do a number of assessments for individuals coming from other areas, other dioceses, let's say Nigeria, Cambodia, Vietnam. So we, like I said, do those type of assessments.
Sure.
No, it amazes me at times when I pick up the phone and hear where these individuals are coming from, and that they would actually take the time to come to us and trust us with the work that we need to do.
Yeah. And what are some of we talked about assessments. What are some of the other, I know you have a couple of other services like spiritual direction. That comes out of outpatient services, doesn't it?
That is correct. We do have spiritual direction. We have outpatient therapy, which we can do via telehealth, because some of the psychologists are members of PsyC, which allows psychologists to cross state lines. And then we also have what we call 3-day assessments, where if a priest or a man, woman, religious, if they're having difficulty, let's say, in ministry or in community, issues with aging, a setting where they don't need to be in residential. So we have them come in and they'll stay for about 2 to 3 days, do some testings, clinical interviews. Then once they've left, we compile all that data, and then we'll have a feedback the following week with the individual as well as his or her superior.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense. So it's and that way they can kind of figure out where they need to work on, where you can help them, and maybe figure out a path to treatment that will help them feel a bit more fulfilled and maybe even balanced, dare I say, in some cases in what they're dealing with.
And even if the recommendation happened to be residential, we would let them know that too. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the choice is up to them.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. I'm sure that I've heard you say how much you've enjoyed your time at St. John Vianney Center, How do you see, I mean, the mission and values of who we are as a center really seem to align well with what you do and your vocation as a religious sister. Was that part of your discernment when you first came here?
It probably was, and I wasn't aware of it at the time. I think just being engaged in the ministry, it just becomes very much a part of you. And I really I enjoy what I do. It's not a job for me. It's a ministry.
Yeah.
And like I said, it just becomes a part of who you are. I mean, I have my days like everyone else.
Right.
But more than not, it's good. And to interact with the different men and women that come down here to do an assessment, that's interesting too. And to hear about their vocation story and to be able to appreciate and their time in following God's calling. And I think that's such a blessing for me, because it even helps my vocation to know that there are other men and women out there that want to enter priesthood and religious life. And that gives me hope.
I would think so. Absolutely. I would imagine in your role, you've heard more vocation stories than most. And that's got to be very edifying for yourself, as well as just the mission of what you do. One of the highlights that I've heard folks talk about, and I think it's one of the perks of being a staff member at St. John Vianney Center are Wednesday liturgies. And just hearing when one of our men or women have gone through residential treatment, and then just hearing them express their journey. Obviously, they express their thanks, but more importantly, maybe what they got out of their time with us. How do those liturgies and those experiences impact you? And do you find them, as I do, just so reinvigorating? It makes me want to get right back to my desk and get back to work, because there's so much good work to do.
It does leave me with a lot of hope. And it leaves me feeling blessed that I am a part of an organization that can help these men and women continue forward with their life, and most especially with their vocation. And I've mentioned this on a couple of other podcasts that you have had, that, when I hear that St. John Vianney saved my life, and St. John Vianney saved my vocation, that for me is a blessing to hear, that we did that. And again, not just ourselves, but God working through us to help them to move forward out of the despair that they felt like they were in. And when they stand up there and show confidence, and maybe stand up and celebrate the liturgy, that just brings joy to my heart. It does.
Well, Sister Karen, thank you for your vocation and the way that your vocation touches so many others who have a vocation. It certainly touched me in my vocation in working for St. John Vianney Center and as an aspiring deacon candidate. And thank you for all that you do. For our listeners, we'll put a link in the show notes to Sister Karen's bio on the St. John Vianney Center, and of course to outpatient services. Any closing thoughts, Sister?
No, I just want to thank you very much for this time, this opportunity to share a little bit about myself, and wishing you a very blessed and holy weekend. Happy Easter.
Oh, happy Easter to you, Sister. And also, I should have mentioned, for more information, we did a nice little write-up on Sister Karen, as well as the outpatient department in our new annual report, and I'll provide a link to that as well in the show notes of the episode. Thanks again for joining us today on the Journey to Thrive podcast. Once again, for more information about our ministry and our mission, you can find us at sjvcenter.org. And thanks again, once again, for joining us on our show today. God bless.